Mr. Secretary, I plan to ask you some budget questions about the following: the cost of the Qatar plane, where the money from the Army's parade is coming from, or the National Guard deployments to the border, where that funding is coming from. I honor and celebrate the United States Army, but I'd like to know how much this parade is going to cost. I have sent the department letters on several occasions on this, and I'm still waiting for a response. But then something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed, and that is the President's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation.
Representative Betty McCollum just slammed Trump's decision to send National Guard troops and even active duty Marines into Los Angeles. And she's right to raise the alarm. This isn't just about troop presence, it's about a troubling pattern of federal overreach disguised as law and order. McCollum is sounding the alarm on several fronts. Where is the funding coming from? Who's making these decisions, and why is the federal government stepping into situations that state and local authorities are fully capable of handling? She's demanding transparency because Americans deserve to know if their tax dollars are being used for politically driven deployment rather than real defense needs. And let's not overlook the larger concern. When a president uses military force to police domestic cities, that's not strength, it's authoritarian theater. McCollum is drawing a line, calling out the abuse of power and pushing back on a move that raises serious constitutional and democratic issues.
History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. The President has issued an executive order and talked about deploying troops across the country. Los Angeles County has 17,000 law enforcement personnel, and the state of California has 24,000 National Guard troops. So that's why the Los Angeles Chief Police to say, and I quote, "The possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles is an absent a clear coordination presents a significant logistical operational challenge for those of us who are charged with safeguarding the city." The end of his quote. As I mentioned before, in Minnesota, we train for those things together.
Law enforcement officials in Los Angeles are raising concerns, and they have good reason too. The idea of deploying federal troops into the city isn't just unnecessary, it's a logistical nightmare waiting to unfold. These officials are already working closely with local agencies and the National Guard. Adding federal troops to the mix risks confusion, redundancy, and chaos. This isn't about needing more boots on the ground, it's about maintaining operational control, clear communication, and respect for local jurisdiction. When the federal government sends in military forces, it disrupts the chain of command and erodes the trust that local agencies have built with the communities they serve. Law enforcement isn't asking for help, they're warning against overreach. And that should say a lot. The presence of additional federal troops doesn't guarantee order. It often leads to more tension, more disruption, and more opportunities for things to go wrong.
So there's no need for the Marines to be deployed. So here are my budget questions, though. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, Are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis.
Representative Betty McCollum isn't holding back. She's asking the question every taxpayer should be asking: who's paying for Trump's decision to deploy Marines and National Guard troops to Los Angeles? In a tense exchange with Hexeth, the focus shifted to the cost and budget implications of this move, which feels more like political theater than a legitimate crisis response. McCollum demanded specifics: which budget is being tapped to fund this deployment, which programs are being cut or delayed to make this show of force possible. Instead of answering directly, Hexeth deflected, pointing to the chaos in Minneapolis under Governor Walz, but that doesn't address the core issue. This isn't about what happened 2 years ago in another city, it's about transparency and fiscal responsibility right now. McCollum's questioning wasn't just about money. It was about priorities, governance, and the dangerous precedent of using military force as a political stunt without clear oversight or justification.
The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question. Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020.
The federal government is doubling down on its claim that ICE has the authority to operate anywhere in the country, even with support from the National Guard and active duty Marines in Los Angeles. It's a bold move that's attracting serious scrutiny. In a tense exchange, reps pressed Secretary McCollum for answers on how this deployment is being funded. Are these troops being pulled from other critical missions? Is money being diverted from training programs or other parts of the defense budget? These are important questions that go to the heart of how military force is being used domestically and who's footing the bill. The idea that military resources can be reallocated at will to support ICE without transparent budgeting or strategic justification is raising major concerns. If we're going to send troops into American cities, taxpayers deserve to know what's being sacrificed and why this is suddenly considered a priority.
There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed,
If the Secretary's not
so we
going to
helped.
ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the
Chairman asked
ground.
for budgetary. If he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to submit them for the record.
Gentlemen will receive an answer to the question.
Let's break this down. The Pentagon's budget has just increased by 13%, and we're being told this surge in funding is meant to prepare the National Guard and even the Marines for contingencies, including maintaining law and order in America's major cities. That should raise concerns because when military budgets grow this quickly and domestic deployment becomes part of the mission, we're not just talking about defense anymore. We're talking about militarizing civil society. Are we really ready to normalize the presence of combat-trained troops patrolling urban streets? With that kind of funding, we should expect better readiness against foreign threats, not an escalation of domestic displays of power. And if this becomes the new norm, we need a serious national conversation about the role the military plays at home and whether this funding is being used to defend democracy or undermine it. So, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. The next one is even more controversial.